Zuzana, you are a historian of logic and logician, and you work, among others, about the members of the Lvov-Warsaw School, its representatives of its logical branch. How did you learn about these logicians?
Actually, I started from another group. I was interested in Arthur Prior, and when I was focusing on his ontology, which is quite interesting according to me, I discovered that he discussed quite a lot Stanisław Leszniewski, and I knew nothing about Leszniewski, and there was nearly nothing written about Leszniewski and the Prior's contribution to Leszniewski. So I was interested in who was Leszniewski, and through Leszniewski I discovered Łukasiewicz's work and the work of other members and other logicians from the Warsaw School. But my first aim was to understand Leszniewski's system of logic and to which extent he influenced Prior. The thing is that I'm not sure whether I was able to understand Leszniewski's system of logic at all, but I'm trying like 10 years from now. But it's a very complicated system, actually.
Okay. Do you think that logicians from the Lvov-Warsaw School played an important role in the history of logic?
I think so, but it seems to me that to some extent this role was forgotten afterwards, because at the beginning they were integral part of this group of logic that was formed around the Vienna Circle and in Lvov-Warsaw School, and also in some other groups in the Europe. But then maybe due to some political reasons, due to some developmental reasons, I don't know actually why, but some important work from them was nearly forgotten, as for instance this Leszniewski's contribution.
Mm-hmm. And you wrote a book about the Lvov-Warsaw School in Czech. It's the first book in the Czech language about this group. What is the knowledge about the Lvov-Warsaw School in our neighbor, country that lays so near to Poland?
Well, you're right. This was the first Czech book, but it was discussed previously by one of professor from my university, from Palacký University. There was Professor Valenta, who wrote a book about the history of analytic philosophy, and there's also a chapter about Warsaw School. And actually, then he had to resign from his position because he was seriously ill. And some of my book about the Warsaw School, actually his book now. So I continue this tradition also a bit. I guess there was quite a great knowledge in 50s and 60s, because when I went through textbooks on logic from the period, the knowledge of the work that was done in Poland was quite deep in those books. To some extent, it's still some parts of the work is still known now, but some of them are lesser known due to the fact that Czech logic and Polish logic are not so close anymore, unfortunately. But still, there are some Polish logicians that visited our country, our conferences, and we also sometimes visit conferences in Poland. So I would say that there is some knowledge. I'm not sure how deep this knowledge of the Warsaw School, but there are some Czech sources besides my book, so it's available.
There is a method of practicing history of logic which was invented by members of the Lvov-Warsaw School. It started from Łukasiewicz. Could you explain us what this method was?
Thing is that it was not invented by Łukasiewicz. There are some logicians that used this method before. It was that Łukasiewicz put a great impact on the fact that if we are dealing with history of logic, we should use formal logic as a tool for investigating this system of logic. He thought, and to some extent he may be right, that this system, even though it was not formalized in history, it was still a system of formal logic. And he, due to the fact that he developed in some older historical books that the people didn't know formal logic, and so they make very serious and very bad mistakes in the history of logic, he started to vindicate this method, and he was quite successful in this vindication, because several historians of logic started to use the method too, due to Łukasiewicz. And I would say he started to do it with a Stoic logic, but maybe the most popular work on this that was written in this method was Aristotle's Logistic from the
for the point of view
for modern form logic. I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the book. This book was tremendously popular in 50s because there were still people that were interested in Aristotelian logic, but that were not fan of this traditional approach to Aristotelian logic. And Łukasiewicz's approach that was on the one hand based on deep knowledge of history of logic and Aristotle, and on the other hand he used this formal logic as something which appeals to them quite a lot. So this is something which was very important, and I think it's still very important in the history of logic, even though there are discussions whether we should really formalize and whether the formalization is faithful to the system of medieval logicians or ancient logicians. And
it is an established fact that logical results from the Lvov-Warsaw School were recognized as something important earlier than philosophical result. Usually it is explained by the fact that when we use symbolic language, it is more easy to understand for people from other countries. Do you think that native languages play some role in practicing logic?
I think so, especially it's quite nicely visible if you compare Russell's and Łukasiewicz's system of logic, because especially this philosophical discussions around predicate logic and Russell's theory of descriptions, it is clearly based on a language that use articles without names, because it's very, I mean, you are also a speaker of Slavonic languages, so you may also discover that it's quite difficult to explain students the definite descriptions if they don't know English enough, because it's based on articles actually. So it seems to me that to some extent it is the case. I'm not sure to which extent Leszczyński's system of logic was influenced by the fact that he was a Pole, but there is something that I knew from my study of Prior, that it was very difficult for Prior to understand how the names behave properly, because there were no articles and there was this yes operator that behave differently than in English. So to some extent, yes, even though nowadays people just use predicate logic. So even though it was developed by logicians from Germany and from England or United States that used articles, we are able to use them too. So it may not be such a big problem, I guess.
You are not only an educated logician, but you are also a logic teacher. What do you think about the significance of logical education?
Well, I'm not sure whether you will like my answer. I mean, I think it's important for some students and some students of philosophy. It's important to know logic, and to some extent, I'm still thinking whether is it possible to teach logic actually. Whether it is the case that students that are in front of me are actually capable of doing logic to some extent, but maybe it's important to show them the way, and some extent also to show the fact that they are able to use logic. But it's a question whether the teaching of logic actually improve their capability of orientations in the nowadays world, and I'm not really sure whether is this the case or not. I would like, I'm a teacher of logic. It would be nice to say, yeah, that is the case, that I'm contributing to the better world, and but I mean, I don't have a blood proof for that.
Well, Jan Łukasiewicz wrote that when you are learned and trained in mathematical logic, you see the world differently. You see the differences when other people do not see the differences. You have a tendency to clarify, to order the reality you examine. So perhaps that would be this influence of logical education.
Yeah, I know the quote. It's very nice. I really like it. But the thing is, it could be helpful, and it could be the case to some of students. But those will be the students who incline to this kind of thinking before, I would say, because there are students that will be always afraid of logic, and they never want to use logic. They really strive for this deep philosophical stuff that is not logical. And they just have to survive logic to some extent. I mean, logic could show you how to think and how some problems, especially stuff like with modus ponens, modus tollens, that they didn't see before. But I'm still not sure whether he was right. I mean, it would be nice if it is the case, but I don't have some proofs for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.